Hi guys. Welcome. How's it going? I'm excited for tonight. I have been waiting to do this one for a while, I feel like. So I'm very excited. Hi Sue, Christine, and Kay. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. Tonight we're going to be working on hand embroidery and I can't wait. So, let me know if you are here to stitch along with me or just to watch and learn because I'm always curious. Hi Robin, Patty, Susan. Hi Missy. So I know that a good amount of you guys said you wanted to watch this because you're curious. Some of you might already have your own kits and you want this to go along with it. Some of you might already know how to sew or how to embroider and you just want company. So I'm sure there's a combination. Let me know which camp you're in. Amanda, just watching and learning. Awesome. So I'm going to show you guys what products we're working with tonight. Pull us up here. Oh, here's my little hi. There we go. Watching and learning. Jane. Okay. I do feel like, okay, Robin's trying to stitch along with me. I do feel like there's most people on the Sip and Sews tend to be watchers and then they come back and either watch later or they learn it while they're watching and they go off and make it by themselves. So I am learning how you guys like to do this. Okay, so I just made this really cute pouch and I wanted to share it with you guys. This is what I'm carrying all my embroidery stuff in. This is called the Make and Go pouch. We had kits for this on the live a couple weeks ago and I decided to make my own. We'll be making more kits in the future. But it's perfect for storing your hand embroidery projects. So I wanted to show it to you guys. Sewing the vinyl in was so easy. The zippers, again, I can't stress enough how much I think sewing zippers and pouches is easier than you think. But this has 3 pouches. And here's where I like to keep my pattern. It fits the pattern from these kits perfectly. And then over here, I have these new scissors I got. Look how cute. And then I keep all my thread over here. Obviously, it's kind of nice that it's see-through and you can see all your colors and stuff. So I'm mostly going to be working with green tonight. I'm just going to sew with you guys where I'm currently at in my project, but I think I'll have to open up one of the purples for one of the stitches. And then this is like a needle, I don't know, what's a needle keep. Okay, so I just wanted to show it to you guys because I think it's cute. I was thinking about doing a sip and sew along with this, but you open up the pattern and it's like on the inside it says like it's prohibited to use this pattern for online classes. And I feel like this is probably in the category of online classes, even though you guys aren't paying to watch, they probably still wouldn't like that. So I don't think I'll be able to do a sip and sew of this bag. But it's a really fun one and it's perfect for what I want in embroidery. Oh, I'll show you. I added this little tab here so I could clip my hoop onto it. Isn't that fun? So I added that part, but it has a pin cushion and a needle keep. Okay, I'm going to set that aside. Here's my project so far. I posted some pictures, so I know that some of you guys have already seen this a little bit. So I'm going to get a little closer. Okay, so I have a list here of some stitches that I'd like to hit within this live and a future one. And we'll either get through my list of ones I want to do tonight or do however many we can in 30 minutes, basically whichever one happens first. I think it's probably how it's going to go. Also trying to figure out the best camera setup. I feel like every week I struggle with my camera setup. Okay, so the first one that we're going to work on today is going to be my Fishbone Stitch, which I am working on with these leaves, all of these leaves. Hopefully I can get close enough for you guys. And then we'll do some stem stitches, which is obviously what you use for the stems. We'll do some lazy daisies, which is how you do little leaves of flowers. And then we'll also do French knots, which are some of the dots over on her dress here. And then if I have time, I will also do a running stitch, which is very simple. It's just the dotted line here. And then a back stitch is not technically in this pattern, but I'll do it maybe on the scraps of the corners or something like that. Okay. So the bunny, the stitches that are used to make the bunny are called long short stitches. I'm going to save that as well as satin stitches, a bullion stitch, spider stitch, things like that for the next time I do this, as well as any other ones I can think of in the meantime. Those ones just feel a little bit more difficult to me. So, yeah, Mary Ellen, I have my fabric a little loose in the hoop. Great observation. I could tighten it back up if I want, but I kind of like this because the way that I have to, rock my needle, I don't want it to be super taut. So that's something you can decide as you do your embroidery, how you like your fabric. I don't like mine super tight because I like to be able to put my needle in and stick it back out, which requires a little bit of give, as opposed to sticking my needle in, pulling it out the other side, etc., etc. So it's a little bit loose in the hoop. It's a good observation. Okay, let's just get started on this fishbone stitch. So all of the leaves in here are fishbone stitches. Sometimes I feel like I do it really, really good, like this one. And then sometimes I feel like it looks a little janky, like this one. And I can usually tell because I'll be watching a movie or something while I'm doing it. And I'll be like, oh, I've just been doing this without really looking. And I don't like it as much. But when I'm paying attention, these little ones are kind of cute. So one thing to pay attention to is how many threads you're using. I'm using one thread because that's what the pattern for this kit suggested is one thread. If your pattern does suggest one thread, I would follow the pattern. However, sometimes when doing satin, long, short, and fishbone stitches, using two threads will make it go faster because obviously it's a little thicker, and so you don't have to go back and forth as much. So I would say that is just another thing that you might learn with experience if you feel comfortable moving back and forth between one and two threads, what stitches you like to use two threads for, etc. I would definitely say that doing stem stitches and other fine lines like this, you want one thread. Oh, Maria says that the leaves are unique, just like real leaves. Yes. Okay, so here I'm gonna get started. So for the fishbone stitch, you would start by coming up at the point of the leaf, but then after that, all of your steps are the exact same. So you're trying to create a line down the middle here to make it look like an actual leaf. And so I'm coming off, you can see I'm coming out of that right-hand side of the leaf, and then I'm going to come into the middle, and then I'm going to stick it out the other side right here. And I'm just paying attention to make sure that the edge of my leaf stays relatively the same the whole way down. It's okay to have it get narrower and thicker like it does at the top and at the base, but what you want to try to avoid is stitches that like are obnoxiously longer or shorter than the stitches next to it. So you can kind of gradually make them larger or gradually make them smaller. And when I come in here, I can see that this is the hole I just came out of, and I don't really want to go directly into that hole again. I'm going like a fiber over. So not even like a full stitch order over or anything like that, but a fiber of my fabric over. So it's not exactly the same hole. And then I'm going to stick it up next to the other one. And because I'm working with one thread, I'm getting it as close as I can. This is very, very close. I feel like my work is really under scrutiny right now. As I've said before, I'm not a professional at this. I just really enjoy it, and I've completed a few of these over the past couple of years, and I just really like it, so I thought I'd pass them on to you, but I know that I am not perfect at this. So I just thought I'd finish this leaf here with you guys and do a stem stitch as well. So this is the fishbone one. If you think about it, it kind of makes me think of doing fishtail braids, like you do with hair, where you bring it, like you have two sections you're working with and you are just constantly kind of trading them back and forth. Hi, Karen. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I just got started. I'm doing my first stitch, which is the fishbone stitch. And ending this one is very simple. You just decide where you're going to stop. You don't have to like end it in any particular way. So a few tips as I'm holding I'm trying to pay attention to what I'm doing because some of it's muscle memory at this point. I have one finger right underneath where I'm working. My hand is holding the hoop right here. And my thumb is like right up against where I'm working as well. So as I stick my needle down, I'm actually kind of sticking it into my finger behind it. So this might be a good time to use a thimble, I don't know. But not very hard. I'm not like stabbing my finger. It's just enough so that my finger behind the needle can help it rock up to the position I want it in. So it just helps me have a little bit more control over where my needle is going. If I don't do that, and it's kind of loose, like someone noticed, my fabric is kind of loose in my hoop. If I don't have my fingers behind it, I'll put my hand over here. Then it's just harder to like stick it out of the right spot. And I'm putting a lot more pressure on the needle than I have to. And it's kind of honestly straining my hand right here. So if I have my finger just directly underneath, it's super easy for me to get it in the right position right away, or within like one or two attempts. So that's kind of how I hold the hoop. Hi, Darlene and her sister Debbie. Welcome. Becca and Annie, thanks for joining. Okay. So as I reach my stem stitch, you might not have done your stem stitch yet. It doesn't really matter if you do the leaf or the stem first. I would just say it's printed on the fabric, so as you reach where the stem would be, you can kind of make it start making your stitches a little bit smaller if you want. But you also, again, you don't want it to be super drastic, so you kind of just want to make it like a gradual change of smaller stitches until they're just really tiny down here by the stem. I really like having these projects to work on because I love having hand projects to be able to take with me. That's why I love the pouch I made, because it's easy for me to throw in my purse or backpack and take anywhere with me. Or while I'm watching a movie or whatever, it's hard for me to just like sit there and watch. So I love hand embroidery because it's a little bit easier for me than it's actually a lot easier for me than doing like a hand quilting project, because these get finished a lot quicker. And you can see the progress a lot faster. So it's more of like a, faster satisfaction doing this than like hand quilting. Although I have been wanting to think of a hand quilting project to do, because I haven't done one in so long. I've only done 3 quilts by hand. Okay, I'm about to finish this off. So I'm putting my needle into where the stem is, and I'm going to pull it out of the back. Jane, it's similar to a satin stitch in that you're making a lot of straight line stitches right next to each other to kind of fill in a space. But it's called a fishbone because you're bringing them back to the center, so it creates that vein down the middle of the leaf. Okay, and just to tie it off, I just stick it through a couple of my stitches in the back, and I make this loop kind of smaller, stick my needle through this loop twice, and tighten it. And then that will be finished with that stitch. Okay, and then if any of you want to know how I do my knots, I actually think this is considered a quilter's knot. I think it's a pretty common one, but just in case, I wet my fingers a little bit, and I grab it, I pinch it, wrap it around my pointer finger, and tuck it between my pointer finger and thumb, and then I roll it like this, and pull it down, like that. If you want, you can trim that little tail off, but you don't have to. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Let's do a stem stitch. So, this stem is a little short for me to do with you guys. Let me see. Let me grab my pattern and see which other stems are this color while I have this on my needle. Okay. Any of these other flower ones are. So let's go over. This is a nice long one right here. Okay. So this stem stitch, what we're going to do is we're going to, I feel like every single time I have to think about if I start at the very end or if I start a little bit in. I start at the very end. Okay. So you're going to start, I'm going to poke it up through the end of one of these stems and pull it through. Okay, and this one, it does matter where your thread is. So I keep my thread toward the curve. So this is curving this direction, so I'm keeping my thread on this side. If it was curved in the other direction, I'd keep my thread on that side. So that'll make more sense as I go along, but I'll hold it back here with my thumb. And then what I'm going to do is I'm thinking of the distance between where I pulled up my thread and where I put down my needle as 2 stitch lengths. So I have like 1 stitch length here and 1 stitch length here. I'm just kind of eyeballing it because what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick my needle in and I'm going to come up halfway. And so I want the distance between that thread, that part of my needle, and that part of my needle to all be about the same size. So I'm pulling it up. And now you can see that because my thread came up in the middle, it's going to keep that piece of thread along the curve as opposed to against the curve. So that's important. So that's my first stitch. It's the only one that's a little bit different. Now they're all going to look fairly the same. I'm going to go, so now my thread's coming out of here. And what I'm going to do is here's 1 stitch length. Here's my other one. And I'm going to poke it up in the same hole that one is coming out of. And from there, it gets pretty quick. You just want to make sure that you pay attention to what side of the curved line you're going against. So this is primarily a stitch you use for curved lines. Back stitches are really great for straight lines. This pattern that I'm working with doesn't have any straight lines in it, and so this one doesn't really use any back stitching. But if you ever do have straight lines, and you want it to look like a continuous line, that's probably how you would do it. You could do a stem stitch. You could definitely do it. It's not like you only do this for curved lines. But do you see how it makes the curve look so smooth? You can't really see where one thread stops and another one starts. So I think that's why this is perfect for curved stitches. Or for curved lines. This. Okay, this is where my last place I'm going. This is honestly a little bit of a bigger stitch than I would like to take, but you're not really going to be able to tell. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come a little bit in from where I want to end up, come out here, and then I'm going to go into this part right here, and that's where I'm going to end. Yes, that's what I did for her hair. So do you see how for her hair, it curves back and forth and back and forth. And so I had to keep changing which side of the curve I kept that thread on. So that's just something that you kind of like, as you figure out how this stitch works, you're like, oh, okay, now I'm going to keep it on this side or this side based off of what direction the curve is going. But that is exactly how I did her hair. Okay, so that was the stem stitch, pretty easy. So on the back, a stem stitch looks kind of like a back stitch, or a back stitch, and the back of a back stitch kind of looks like a stem stitch. So they're just kind of like you're doing the opposite of each other, which might make more sense once I show you how to do a back stitch. Okay. Let me get this ready again. I have done stem and fishbone. We're going to do French knot, lazy daisy, and how about I just go ahead and show you guys the back stitch since I'm talking about it. I don't need it in my, I'm just going to do it over here on the edge. So I'm just going to come up here at any point. I'll draw a line just so you guys can see like how you would do it if you were going along a line. Okay, something like that. Terrible line, but whatever. Okay, so this is kind of the opposite of a stem stitch. What you would do is you would go behind your stitch one, or behind your thread, 1 stitch length, and in front of your thread, 1 stitch length, like this, so that your thread is coming out of the middle. And then you'd go like this, and then you'd put your needle into the same hole right here to meet up with that green stitch, and then go forward another stitch right here. So that's how it would look. Oh, Becky, I'm sure you could. It's very it's very much one of those skills where practice makes perfect. Some of my first hand embroidery projects are just not very good. Okay, so that's just a very quick example of a back stitch. You're more meeting the stitches end to end instead of overlapping them like a stem stitch, but in the back of the back side of a back stitch looks like a stem stitch. That's what I was saying, is they're kind of the opposite of each other. And then whenever you're done, you would just put your needle in right here like that, and you'd be done. And I'm not gonna knot this off because I don't really want to keep it there, but there we have it. Okay, so for both my lazy daisy, running, and French knot, I need a purple. So let's see. Looks like I need this plum one. I'm going to take the tape off. And side note, if you're using these same kits as I am, the thread comes wrapped on here very long, so I like to cut it in half. It's just too long to work with, and I think it's meant to be cut in half. So I'm going to cut this. Because look, even if you cut it in half, it's still a very long piece of thread. So then I'm going to take one of those strands. Embroidery floss always has 6 strands on it. You're going to take one of them and pull it out. All right. I don't know if you guys can hear the neighbors, but they are so loud. It sounds like they're in my house. Like through the window, I can hear them. Okay, let's work on one of these clusters of lazy daisy stitches. So for this stitch, I haven't done it for this project yet. I just want to make sure before I tell you something wrong. Yeah, okay. So for this stitch, you're going to come out of, it's the first one that's a little bit, okay. So your first stitch is going to be a little bit odd, because what I'm doing is I just pulled it out of the base of one of these teardrop shapes, but I'm going to not put it in the same hole. I'm going to put it like a couple fibers over, and poke it back up through the opposite side of the teardrop shape. Actually, I should explain this a little bit better. You're going to take your thread and you're going to loop it around. So make sure that your thread is making a loop here, because as you stick your needle back in and rock it out of this teardrop shape, it's going to catch. Your loop is going to catch right here like this. And then you're done with that one and you'll move on to your next one. But you have to, so here's the loop and you have to secure it. So I'm going to put my needle in the same hole right here, but because it's going on, it has this loop. I feel like I don't know if I'm doing a good job explaining this. You're kind of tacking it in place with a little stitch. Okay, hopefully that made sense. I'll do it a couple more times. So how are they, is she pulling it? Okay. I feel like I haven't done this in so long. So I used to teach kids classes at the shop, and we would have a day for quilting, a day for piecing, a day for quilting, a day for applique, and a day for embroidery. And on the embroidery day, this is the stitch I taught them. So I promise I've taught this before, but it's been like a year since I've done it. Pull it out. That to look like a nice teardrop. And this is also a little bit tricky because you don't want it to look like a straight line, like if you pull it too tight, but you don't want it to be too messy either. So the tension on this one's kind of important. Okay. Pull it out. This one. Okay, and we loop it around here. What's interesting about embroidery is how much it matters what way the thread is lying. Like the tail of the thread right here, where it's lying in relation to your needle and your stitch. I found that in lots of stitches that actually does matter. Okay, thanks, Jane. Okay, I'll just do these last two and then we'll move on to the other stitches. Oh, Amanda, I'm glad to hear it. So this is actually my first time doing the long short stitches with the rabbit. It was very bizarre to me. I will be showing that in the next video, but it was very weird. I feel like I thought that it was just satin stitches, and then I realized like how, you know, you'd be doing patches of stitches that all go the same direction and patches that go another direction. And this, the way that this is done allows for a lot more like fluidity, like the little loop I was able to make here at his leg, and things like that, that I'm really glad that that technique exists, because it makes it look so much more like you can blend different colors in here. Like this is 3 different shades of brown that went into making the rabbit. And it was a lot easier than I thought, but it felt like you had to map it out in your brain where each color was going to go. and when you did a short stitch and when you did a long stitch. It's very interesting. Okay, so that's my last lazy daisy. Hope that was helpful. I'll go ahead and knot this one off, and then we'll do a French knot. Yeah, it's great for doing things that look like they're supposed to be furry or have like a texture to them. Okay. Okay, so, no, Shirley, so yeah, okay, so actually, a chain stitch is a lazy daisy stitch that you do in a line. So you would do like multiple of those loops, but in a continuation of each other, in a line. I forgot about a chain stitch. A lazy daisy is like one loop of that, if I'm remembering correctly. So it is very similar. Okay, so she has a lot of French knots here on her dress. Actually, her dress is the dark purple, so I'm going to do the French knot over here with this cluster. Okay, so I have my dots. I'm going to come up at one of them. And this is where working with a hoop is nice. If you didn't have a hoop, this part would be a little bit harder, I think, because it gets the fabric off the ground a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my thread here. And I'm going to take this, and I'm going to keep the needle right at the base of where this thread is coming out, and I'm going to wrap it around like 3 times and then make sure that it can get like tighter like that. And like slowly move the needle back to where you want it to go and stick it back in there. So it's going in that almost the same hole that you came out of before. And I'm going to, this is why it's nice to have the depth of the hoop, because I can stick my needle in and it'll go in. And then you want to keep your thumb on the thread, make sure that it stays nice and taut down there at the base of the fabric. Pull your needle all the way through. And it creates that knot. So I'll do this a couple more times. I feel like this is a lot easier than some people think, but the technique might take a couple times to get it right. Because it is a technique, you have to remember that these are techniques and they're skills, and every time you do it, you'll get better. So it's not just, like what I'm saying is, it's not just a matter of following instructions. It's also a matter of trying it. So I'll do it 2 more times. I have my thread in one hand and my needle in the other. I wrap it around. I like to do 3 times. Some people do it only like 2 times. It does affect the size of your knot, and I just like it a little bit bigger and noticeable, so I do it 3 times. Carefully move it back so that it doesn't slip off the end of the needle, but then you stick the needle directly into the fabric. Keep that tension on here and pull. And if it goes wrong, like this is about to do, all of that'll happen is it'll pop through the other side. So what happened, my nose, you guys know I have very itchy nose. What happened is I put my needle in the same hole instead of a couple threads over. So when that happens, you just have to make sure you put your needle a little bit, like not in the same hole as this. See, this happens to me too. Here in a different hole. Keep it tight. There we go. Now it'll stay. Just like piecing and quilting, you get better and more confident the more you do it. Yes, Amanda. I mean, all of you guys know this. You're all artists and crafters. You guys all know that practice makes perfect. But I feel like sometimes when you're really good at something, or if you're very comfortable with something, learning a new skill can sometimes feel kind of scary. But it just kind of comes with the territory. All right, so there's our French knot. It's kind of silly, but I do like to still knot this in place, even though we just made a million knots. Shirley, I'm doing one strand of thread because that's what the instructions said for this one. But I go back and forth. That's okay, Shirley, no problem. I do go back and forth. If the instructions do not specify, then for stitches like the long short, the satin stitches, the fishbone stitches, anything that has the stitches going back and forth close together, then I like to have 2 strands because it just fills up the space faster. It's like having a thicker marker versus a thinner marker when you're coloring. And so I do go back and forth, but this one specifically says on my pattern, for best results, stitch with only 1 strand. So I'm just doing it all with 1 strand. I can definitely see how that makes a difference with these stem stitches, especially with the hair and everything. I do feel like I could have done this with 2, but I don't know. I'm sure she had a reason for saying that. Okay, so the last stitch we're going to cover today is the running stitch, which is very easy. It's just going to be, I'm not going to do it on there because it's not the right color, but it's just going to be basically what we like to call the hand quilting stitch. You're just going to go back and forth like this. The trick is just to make sure that all of your stitches and spaces are the same length. Which we had on the live yesterday, something called tiger tape, and it has lines so that you can, it's like tape that you put right next to your hand stitching if you're doing like quilting or something like that, and you want to make sure all of your spaces and stitches are the exact same length. You use the tiger tape to help you measure that. But yeah, Robin, your pattern says to use 2. Great, go with 2. I've noticed that she changes it up based on the pattern, so I'm sure she has a reason. Jane, yeah, so 3 or 4 times for the knots. I think that's a little bit better for me than 2. 2 is just really small. I guess it depends on what you're doing, but it's not easy, and it does take time to develop. I hope this helps you guys out. I'll announce when I'm going to be doing the part 2 of embroidery. That'll be the more complicated stitches that we talked about tonight. But thank you so much for joining. I'm going to sign off for the night, but I hope that was helpful. We covered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different stitches tonight. If you're joining late or if you're watching this later, you can go back and rewatch as many times as you need to. Let me know if you have any questions. All of these kits are available for purchase on our website, or I included the link to it in the description of this video so you can find it that way. Oh, Robin, you're doing Happy Garden. Good. I love that one. It's so cute. So Happy Garden has the bullion stitch in it, which I have to remember how to do because it's been a while since I've done that. And it's a little bit more complicated, but it was really fun once I figured it out. I like doing it. All right, guys, I will see you guys next week, either on our Wednesday live or next Thursday. And I'll let you know when we're going to be doing part 2 of embroidery. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.